Welcome to Tuesday night, the Queesit Inn. We're live. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like this video or pass it on to some friends. Definitely some fantastic information here. Reverend Lynne Bryan Phipps, how are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you, Scott?
Good. Thank you for coming on the Rhode Island Wave Spotlight Series.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, your personal background.
So I am an ordained minister in the United Church of Christ. So I'm Protestant. I moved to Rhode Island first to go to RISD, and I am an architect that was trained at RISD for 30 years. I did sustainable buildings, and I'm a lifelong equestrian. And doing the work that we do grew out of my love for horses and my love for people, and the realization with one particular horse that horses are doing way more for people than we actually give them credit for.
So you came from where originally?
Originally, I'm from North Carolina. Both my parents are from North Carolina. I came here to go to school and
Stuck it out, huh?
I have. It's a wonderful, wonderful place.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for all the sustainable building back when it wasn't fashionable.
Back before it was fashionable,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about, you said your love for horses. Is it one horse or a few horses that when you were doing equestrian that kind of changed your mind of thinking this isn't a horse to just jump and show, this is a horse that I can connect with?
Yes. So I grew up riding horses. I grew up as a barn rat, mucking stalls and doing anything I could do to be around horses because my family didn't have the resources to have horses of our own. And as I grew up, and had children, my girls both got interested in horses. And so I was taking them for lessons and all of that, and bought our first family horse, or our first horse, when my oldest daughter was about 13 and my youngest was about 8 or so. And from there, have owned several other horses. But it's one horse in particular that's still part of our program here, named Raja. I was looking for my first upper-level dressage horse. I do dressage now. Used to show jump. And looking for that horse, I realized just how important the connection to the horse is, because I really hadn't had the opportunity to connect with so many horses. And in the context of realizing that connection with him, I looked back over the other horses that I'd owned and ridden and discovered how each of them had met me at different points in my life and helped me through different things. He was just so demonstrative about the way he did his work that it was pretty difficult to miss. So.
And that grew into Beachwood?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that.
Beachwood Center for Integrative Equine Therapy, or Beachwood Center for Wellbeing, is our 501c3. We help people heal from trauma and stress-related illness with horses. And I didn't want to be that crazy horse lady who thought something was happening. So I developed a protocol or an approach that was measurable. We eliminated variables to make sure that we could measure it. A faculty member at Brown University in the Department of Public Health took an interest in what we were doing. And so there's data that's been collected since 2017 on what we do, and a peer-reviewed paper is going to be published the end of this month in a national journal, and then another in an international journal about the findings. That was delayed a little bit through COVID, because when you have data being collected by in these ways with people, you have to have IRBs, and those are attestations, basically, that say that you're not harming somebody or people aren't being used as guinea pigs. And during COVID, all the IRBs in the country had to be re-reviewed because there were new parameters And the re-reviews took quite a long time. So we have an IRB with the VA and an IRB with Brown, and we were allowed to collect data, but they weren't allowed to look at it until all that had been made sure that it was safe. And here we are.
So when you say, and I do want to get into a couple of the statistics, but when you say you want to help people work with horses, it's not putting someone on a horse and doing show jumping.
There is no riding involved in our therapy. It is all on the ground. So if I were to put somebody on a horse and we were to take you the places that you go in your mind while you're doing the therapy, it would not be safe. One of the most beautiful things about what we do is literally watching the interaction. On the surface, if you're standing on the outside, it looks like two people standing in a field with a horse. What's going on inside is pretty magical. It's an amazing dance of what the horse is showing and teaching us. We can literally help people with pre-verbal trauma. So they've been in therapy for however long, it doesn't matter, but we get a lot of referrals from mental health care practitioners of people who get in stuck places, and what we can help with are things that they don't have words for.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about, you're talking about the mental health crisis. How big is that issue in Rhode Island?
Oh my gosh, it's enormous. So we actually have NANI, the National Alliance of Mental Health. The most recent data was, I guess it's technically post-COVID. It's 2021, probably in the middle of COVID. And during 2021, 40% of the adults in Rhode Island reported symptoms of anxiety, and nearly 10,000 teens were reporting depression. So what we know now is those numbers have not decreased, and we don't have the mental health care practitioner capacity to treat everybody. We also know that 70% of adults in Rhode Island do not have access to mental health support.
And
That's a lot.
And it's not just, some of those have insurance but can't get there.
Right.
Some of them say, okay, I can get to an office, but I call and it's 6 months for an appointment.
I can't get an appointment. Exactly.
So this is and I don't mean to use alternative as in odd medicine, but this is an option to try to.
This is an option. And one of the things that's really important about the data that we have is that we know that so for instance, if someone comes to us with anxiety disorder, diagnosed anxiety disorder, we know that the insurance company is going to plan for them to spend 18 months to 2 years in therapy, take medication, and that it will be episodic. It will recur, and they expect to pay for anxiety disorder repeatedly. The data that we have that has been collected on what we do, because it's independent third-party data, shows that it takes an average of 7 sessions, which is less than a third of the time, so less than 3 months, that people go off of medication, not because we ever advise them to go off of medication, but because they are with their doctors figuring out that they're feeling better. And that people who came to us pre-COVID did not, through COVID, experience symptoms of anxiety disorder. So I cannot say that they will never experience recurring instances of anxiety disorder. But I can say the thing that caused probably the highest level of anxiety in our recent history did not cause those folks to experience anxiety disorder. And the way that we see or understand as we do more, and now we're onto new and different studies and starting to think about what other questions to ask other than the original questions that were being asked in the data that was being collected. And what we're seeing is that when somebody has an experience that's fearful, so we like to say in our practice that trauma is anything that's way too big for you when you have to face it, and so you're not ready, you don't have the coping strategies, you're too little, or you're not ready, that you perceive that you have to get through it alone. So whether there are other people around or not, you think there's a fire or a natural disaster or something going on in your family. And there might be other people around, but as far as you're concerned, they're not going to be able to help you right now. We store those memories and we build a neural pathway or a neuron fires from the fight or flight part of our brain rather than the place where conscious thought and short and long-term memory are stored. We have to remember that that neural pathway that got built at the age and stage you were when the first instance happened. Okay? So then anytime after that you perceive you're in a similar situation, the neuron fires before you get to think about it, and it's only as old as you were when it first happened. So I like to use the example of a child who's going to kindergarten that's really not ready to go to kindergarten. And everybody's excited for them and, got your lunchbox and you got your backpack and mom's saying, this is a great thing, you're going to go to kindergarten. And you're saying, you mean I'm going to be away from you all day? You mean you're not going to be there? You mean I'm not going to know anybody? And for many children, that's perfectly reasonable. They've already been socialized. They've had lots of other opportunities. They're very comfortable. But there are some kids for whom that is a really scary thing. But because mom's saying, it's going to be great, it's going to be great, they're like, yeah, I guess I just have to do this. Those are the kids that later in life we see having social anxiety, difficulty in school, all kinds of other situations, because the person that shows up when they get triggered is about 5 or 4. And they're not able, when they're in middle school or later elementary school or even in high school, to access all the coping strategies that they've actually developed. There's no opportunity to access them. What we do is we help you to get in a very safe place. You can only access trauma from a very safe place. We help you to build a neural pathway, a bridge, I like to say an exit ramp, to the conscious part of your brain. And then we help you exercise it so that you can actually be connected to all of you when you're going through that thing that happened way back when that was really triggering and scary.
And what is your typical age that you see?
We see kids anywhere starting 7, 6, 7, 8, mostly 7 or 8, up to adults in their 70s. People come to us with everything from fibromyalgia, chronic pain, heart disease. They've had a heart incident that they just happen to, that they come and they're like, I know that whatever happened to me has to do with this thing that happened to me when I was a kid, and I need to heal. Because if I can heal that, then I won't keep having these. Okay, now you and I both know that's not a medically documented experience, but they have a deep sense that the trauma that happened to them when they were little causes the panic or causes the heart racing or causes the thing that incited the heart incident. Or we have folks with chronic pain or fibromyalgia. We have folks with anxiety disorder, depression, all kinds of behavioral or physical issues.
And it must be something to, now, as we talked in the green room, that I'm familiar with horses, and I know in horse terms we talk hands, but in regular folks we'll talk height and size.
Right.
Must be something to see with a horse's head up, 7, 8, 8.5 foot tall horse.
Absolutely.
Lean down to a 7-year-old.
And
It can be extremely intimidating.
And profoundly comforting.
Mm.
Yeah, because we get people connected. So our culture has us thinking. We value what goes on in our brain. We very often get disconnected from what goes on in our heart and what goes on in our gut because we're trained to focus on the logical part of it.
Right.
In order to connect with a horse, you've got to connect your whole being. Horses read what we call congruence. if you're behaving from your head differently than you're feeling in your body, they read you as two different things.
Mm-hmm.
So to help people, first of all, get connected in their own bodies is a huge step. Then to connect with a horse and have a horse confirm what you're feeling or respond to you based on what's going on in your mind and what you're remembering is a pretty powerful experience. I like to think that it's partly why it's so effective is because it's a multisensory experience. Instead of sitting and talking about something and just revisiting it and trying to feel differently when you revisit it, we're literally in a safe place and experiencing something and then seeing and hearing and touching and having a multisensory experience that helps your whole being to remember it better.
How many horses are on the site?
In Rhode Island, we have 3 horses that do this work. So some of the variables that we eliminate in order to do the work that we do in a documentable fashion is that we only work with warm bloods. So warm bloods are the breed of horse that originates in Europe way back between the 13th and the 15th centuries. We know each of our horses' bloodlines or heritage, literally, to the 13th, between the 13th and 15th century, depending on which horse. We know each of their life histories, so we know there's no trauma in their life histories. And we ask them, we work with them enough to see that they enjoy doing this work. Some horses enjoy it, some people don't. I'm confident every horse can do it. But if you like doing what you do it more reliably, more often, just like you or me. If we love what we're doing, then we show up at work enjoying it, right?
It's the old theory, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life.
Exactly. So we treat our horses that same way. So, but those horses were bred way back when, literally to be that knight in shining armor horse that will go to its death for its person. And we take advantage of that level of connection, that level of willingness to be connected with a human of those horses.
So talk me through, someone contacts you, and I assume you work with insurances?
So we don't take insurance for 2 reasons. One, there are just different levels of support for equine therapy. It's becoming more knowledgeable and more understood. The riding therapy that most people think of, that kids with cerebral palsy or different physiologic symptoms, is covered differently than anything with behavioral health. Right now, we have a shortage of behavioral health, so it's much more often. We can provide what's called a super bill, so we can provide the bill that you get reimbursed for services.
Okay.
But it's taken a long time to get where we are.
Right.
And so it's just, yeah.
And I'm going to have to say, from my perspective of the medical side, being a 501c3 allows you different gateways and grants.
Absolutely.
And when everybody says, well, we take insurance, the cost to take the insurance sometimes doesn't outweigh the price of the patient.
In our world, in our 501c3, the cost for billing would be a whole nother person, which would add to the cost of our services.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We try to be as lean as possible.
Okay.
Yes.
And talk me through, someone's contacted you, say they have if someone out there's listening, I have a young person,
Yes.
or,
Child,
it's
friend, family member.
or the person themselves contacts you and says, I think I want to give this a try.
Yes.
How does that
So you can contact us through our website, which is www.beachwood, BEACH, because we're in the Ocean State,
All right.
beachwoodri.org.
Okay.
So that's our website. We actually have 5 locations across the country now. We started in Rhode Island. We also have a location outside Philadelphia. We have a location in Washington, D.C., outside Washington, D.C. and Maryland. We have a location in Florida, and we have a location in Davis, California, Northern California. So, and we will see people in what are called intensives. So you might choose to do sort of a retreat, kind of a vacation in the winter, someplace warm, or you might want to be here in Rhode Island in the summer because it's beautiful, or the fall or the spring because it's beautiful much of the year here. But you might not feel comfortable doing it here in the winter. We do see people year round here, and we have a beautiful barn with all the facilities to keep everybody warm if you want to be here in the winter. But you contact us through our website or our phone number. We have a 401 number and an 877 number. And Andrea or Crystal will answer the phone or get back to you and talk with you about what's going on and recommend, based on all of our data, the best approach based on what your goals are. And then you get scheduled in whatever location we have, you decide you want to come to.
And then it starts from there.
And it starts from there.
You get to meet your equine therapist.
You get to meet your equine therapist and your horse. And it can be, I think a lot about people who are really struggling, and they might be on disability for a while because they can't be with people, or we've had children who are in high school and can't get out of bed to go to school, and they're going to fail because they're not getting to school and their parents are beside themselves. And we can be a really, really efficient and highly effective approach.
And from my experience with horses, they're really good listeners.
They're profoundly good listeners.
And they have a lot of things to say just by their emotions. I mean, some do talk quite a bit, but just their ear movements, their eyes, their head.
And we help people get to know and read those things while we read them. It's an amazing experience.
And you've graduated a lot of people from it.
Oh my goodness, we've seen so many people, and some really profound stories. We have people who brought their children because they had medical trauma from birth, or people whose kids couldn't get to school because of, as I mentioned, just so much anxiety about the social anxiety, or individuals with fibromyalgia, and we discovered that it was preverbal trauma and they don't have fibromyalgia anymore, or folks who have been addicted. With addiction, we see people when they're in recovery. We are not a rehab facility, but we can see people in recovery, and almost always there's underlying trauma. And we had one person who came to us who'd been in recovery a long time. She was actually doing really well, but was dealing with some anxiety, and didn't even mention that she smoked cigarettes. It was just a habit. And about halfway through her therapy, she said, the weirdest thing is happening. Like, I don't even want to smoke a cigarette. I don't even need to, decompress with that. She stopped smoking. Just wasn't her goal, but it was a side effect. So a lot of amazing and wonderful stories.
Right. So give the information again if someone could reach out to the ladies in the office.
Yes, it's Beachwood, BEACHWOODRI.org. So www.beachwoodri.org. And the phone number is 401-788-9110 or 877-788-HEAL. HEAL.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more, seeing the work that you're doing and reading your published papers. I'm sure you'll have, once they're officially approved, you'll have those on the website as well.
Yeah, we'll have links on the website.
Great.
Because those are journal articles that will be wherever. I don't know what I'm allowed to do, but I'm definitely allowed to link.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.